I'm not a believer that something out there is lopsided. I believe that there's two sides to things. So I tell people when somebody's been bullied, I say, okay, so how did it help you? In all probability, somewhere in your life, you felt that you were being bullied by somebody. I've asked people in my Breakthrough Experience program and other programs that I presented, how many of you had been bullied somewhere in your life, somewhere in some fashion, at work, home, play, school, somewhere? And every hand goes up. And then I've asked another question. How many of you perceive that you have bullied somebody else? And the hands go up. And occasionally you get somebody that's hesitant about putting their hands up there because they don't want to admit it. But if they look very carefully, to somebody's perception, maybe not their own, but to somebody's perception, they felt bullied by them. So the question is it possible to get zero bullying? I don't think so. I've never met anybody in all my programs that hasn't been feel like they've been bullied somewhere in their life by somebody at a store or somebody at a restaurant. Or, I mean, if you stop and think about it, if you don't get what you want at a restaurant, sometimes you can get assertive with people. And I've certainly been that way at an airport a few times when they said, "You're sorry, but your ticket's not showing it on our reports there," even though I've got a ticket in my hand. But, I don't just go, I demand that Richard Branson come to the front desk, please. But you see that we go through life and we end up thinking we're going to go through with nothing but peace and harmony and happiness and that kind of thing. But I think that that's a really setting ourselves up for a myth. Having an expectation of a one-sided world and not a two-sided world, I think sets us up for illusion. I like to use the magnet as an example. If you try to get a one-sided magnet, the positive pole without the negative pole, or peace without war, or pleasure without pain, or positive without negative, or relief without grief, or something like that. Anytime you get a one-sided pole, you're setting up a fantasy about how life's going to be, and then the other pole, when it hits you, and it's going to, you're now unprepared for it. It really feels like it's a wound. It really hurts. I'm going to make a statement that's not going to be pleasing to some people, but the addiction to praise, the addiction to pleasure, the addiction to, support makes the pain and the war and the conflict and the criticism even more painful. I don't have those fantasies. I stopped those fantasies when I was around 13 because I realized I was beaten up by a gang. And I was looking at what am I doing to draw in a gang? The gang's not picking on somebody else. Why are they picking on me? What am I doing? And I realized that my parents had moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas, and I didn't really want to move. I wanted to be with my buddies and friends. When I went there, they were trying to make me please, and they were over supporting me and giving me things and generous and everything else. And so nature has a way of maximizing growth at the border of support and challenge. So the more they were trying to support me to make me feel, quote, happy, the more I was getting bullied by the people over there to make me the other side. And then what was interesting is the more they were supporting me, the more I was becoming juvenilely dependent and becoming entitled and expecting. And the more they were challenging me, the more I became more independent and precocious and capable of standing on my own 2 feet. When I look back in my life, it was the challenging components of my life that actually made me grow and made me more authentic in my life and made me go back to priority. Whenever somebody supports you, you tend to subordinate to them. You tend to inject their values. You try to live in their values to please them for fear of loss of them because you're dependent on them. But at the same time, when somebody challenges you, you become independent and you stand on your own 2 feet and think for yourself. So nature has a way to make sure you get support and challenge. The overprotector and the overbullier. And if you get an addiction, if you get addiction to the overprotection, you're going to get the aggressor. If you get addicted to the person that's praising you and you want to have support and praise all the time, you're going to get the person that's criticizing and challenging you. The support and praise makes you proud and builds yourself up and makes you inauthentic. And the other one brings you back down again to bring you back inauthentic. And you're basically addicted to one, so the other one hurts. In the Buddhism, it says the desire for that which is unobtainable is in the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is a source of human suffering. So I don't try to avoid the pain and seek the pleasure. I found that hedonistic pursuit is self-defeating. I gave up happiness. It made me too sad. What I'm interested in is having an objective view on life. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you're expecting to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, positive, never negative, support, never challenging, protective, not aggressive, you're really living in a delusion because that's going to make you have to force yourself to only be supportive to yourself. And the pursuit of one side is going to be self-defeating. Anytime we try to repress a side of ourselves and try to express only one side, eventually the repression explodes. And we eventually download a major outlet of all that stuff we've repressed. So I don't find that productive. I'm not interested in repressing half ourselves and getting rid of half yourself to love yourself. I'm interested in loving both sides of yourself and loving both sides of others. If I ask people, how many of you believe that they're nice and never mean, and kind, never cruel, and positive, never negative, and peaceful, never wrathful, and generous, never stingy, nobody can put their hand up and say, I'm that way all the time. If I say that you're always mean, never nice, they can also say I'm not that way either. But if I say sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, everybody goes, yep, that's me. So why would you have an expectation on somebody to be one-sided when in fact life has both sides? I'm not a nice person. I'm not a mean person. Those are personas that I might wear. I'm an individual with a set of values, and you support my values, I can be nice as a pussycat. You challenge my values, I can be mean as a tiger. I'm a human being. I have the capacity for both. I've got the sympathetic and parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems for rest and digest and fight or flight. And I need both of those in order to maximize my growth. We're in a world where we got both support and challenge. And it's been shown that we grow most, we get both. If we're like an animal out there and we've got prey and predator, if we had prey without predator, we'd be gluttonous and fat and lose fitness. If we had predator without prey, we'd get emaciated and starve and lose fitness. But if we put prey and predator there, we eat just enough to maintain our tone and agility and make sure we don't overeat and get gluttonous, because we target. And the more you overeat, the predator comes and targets you because it gets more calories for the least amount of effort, and you're sluggish, you can't run. So it keeps you eating moderately when you have a balance of those two. So I'm not saying you're here to get rid of the predator. I'm not here to get rid of the bully. I think the bully plays a role in the world. But what happens is we have an addiction to this fantasy about peace and kind and sweet and zero tolerance of that. Now, what I found out is when I was a young boy, there was a kid around the street that had a health issue, and his parents were very protective of him because he didn't want him to get sick. And the kids around the neighborhood were bullying him. And the more the parents protected him, the more he got bullied. And we saw that. We were watching kids go by and just push him as he's walking down the street with their bikes. And I was wondering, what's the things going down? But I saw the parents protecting and overprotecting. Eventually, they moved him to a different area away from the bad guys in the neighborhood. The same thing happened in that area. They moved to a completely different house, and the same thing happened there. So you wonder what's going down. I really think it's a dynamic going on between two people, just like in a relationship. So I'm a firm believer that you need both in order to grow. You need both support and challenge, kind and cruel. If you're way over addicted to the praise, you're going to get hurt by the criticism. And the criticism is breaking your addiction to the praise. So I'm a firm believer that you need a little of both. I know for myself, when I got bullied, I went and started bodybuilding. I got myself in shape, and I eventually took on the guy that bullied me, and then we became best friends after that. And it was the nature was trying to teach me to get my testosterone levels back into balance and not have too much of the estrogen levels. I was basically being too nurtured instead of actually natured, you might say. So I'm a firm believer you need a little of both in life. And I think about my life, I don't go a day without having both support and challenge. And I'm probably supportive and challenging when I'm in my seminars. When I see people that are wishy-washy and dodging and basically playing overprotected and this kind of thing, I give them heck. I said, get to work, let's go. And I see sometimes parents, when you have one parent that's overprotective, you get the other one that says go play in the traffic. And it gets tough on them. And the more one is polarized, the more the other is polarized. If you both come to the center and embrace both sides of yourself, you bring it to balance, you train your children to have that balance, and they're less likely to be considered a necessity for bullying. But I'm a firm believer that you need both. And I promote that because I was attacked one time in a magazine article in Australia, and 43 million people around the world, the magazine went viral, and I got attacked by a bunch of people. And then I got supported. And I proved right on the spot that as the number of attackers were going up, so were the supporters. As the supporters were going up, so were the attackers. And I saw that, and I was chuckling. I was literally writing down who was attacking and who was supporting, and I kept an inventory, and it was nice and balanced. I had another situation when I was in South Africa. I wrote an article that was controversial, and I got both supporters and challenge. We found 900 attacks on me, even threats. And at the same time, there were people saying that we want you to run for president. There were supporters and challengers. And then one could be called bullies. If I was addicted to one and said I should only get support, I just want to be liked, well, then I'm not going to grow. I needed both, and they kept me balanced. If I get overprotected and supported, I become juvenilely dependent, and I put a false expectation on my life about how life's supposed to be, and I'm unprepared. That's why you need a little of both in life. So I'm a firm believer that if you're going in life, every goal is going to have support and challenge. Every individual you interact with is going to have support and challenge. Even your friends can turn out to be your enemies, and enemies can be your friends over time. And the very thing you think is terrible a day, a week, a month, a year, or 5 years later can have terrific in it. And the very thing you think is terrific a day, a week, a month, a year, or 5 years later can be terrible in it. And so I'm not a believer that something out there is lopsided. I believe that there's two sides to things. So I tell people when somebody's been bullied, I said, okay, so how did it help you? And they go, well, it didn't. And I said, I didn't ask. I said, how did it help you? Well, I became more independent. Great. I started thinking for myself. Yes. I started selecting new people in my life. Yes. I started pursuing what was important to me. I started reflecting. How did it benefit you? And you get a thicker skin. I'm more resilient. I'm more capable. I became more of an entrepreneur. I didn't rely on other people. Well, stop and look at the upsides to it. And then look at what happens when you're overprotected. I just worked with a gentleman who has an overprotected son. He's basically been taken care of. He's never done it. He's not growing up. He's not maturing. He's not standing on his own 2 feet. They're having to rescue him. That's what one extreme leads to. And therefore, people give him a hard time and bully him, it seems, in his mind, because he's addicted to this one side. So I'm a firm believer in honoring both sides of life. We have a parasympathetic, and a sympathetic nervous system for a reason. One's for fight or flight, one's for rest and digest. One's for challenge, one's for support. We need both of them. We have apoptosis, which is cell destruction, and mitosis, cell building. We need both of them to evolve our physical body. We need both of those to keep our mind alert. It's the challenges in life that comes up with creative innovation, ingenious activities, not the support. If things are supported, we stay stagnant. We get challenged, we tend to grow and come up with adaptations. So we need both. Even in the learning process, we need assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is information we already know, and we go, yeah, I know that. And accommodation is stuff we don't know. And we maximally grow our knowledge in a balance of assimilation and accommodation, similars and differences, things we like and dislike. So I'm a firm believer that you need both in life, and I'm going to stand in that direction and let people know, because what's going on out there is this fantasy land, this putty land that's basically saying you're supposed to be, one-sided and only nice, never mean, everything else. I don't think that's real. It's setting people up for false expectations. It's preparing people in not preparing people for reality, and it's basically stopping them from being accountable in their life. And accountable means to be able to see both sides of the balance sheet, both support and challenge in your life. So I'm a firm believer that you need both. And so there's a correlation between this bullying response and our addiction to one side. Our amygdala wants to avoid pain and seek pleasure. If we're living in our inauthentic amygdala as a survival mechanism, we're going to want one peace without war, pleasure without pain. If we're living in our executive center, we are embracing it. I found out many years ago that if we pursue challenges that inspire us, we don't attract challenges that don't. So if you're tackling and pursuing a challenge that inspires you, and embracing both sides and mitigating the risks and finding solutions to it, so you break the fantasies and pursue real objectives in life, you're less likely to be bullied, you're less likely to be challenged, because you're empowering your life. Any area of your life you don't empower, people are going to overpower you. If you don't empower yourself intellectually, you'll be told what to think. If you don't empower yourself in business, you'll be told what to do. If you don't empower yourself in your relationship with money, you'll be told what you're worth. If you don't empower yourself in relationships, you'll be doing honeydew stuff around and be bullied by your spouse. And they'll use emotional blackmails, and you'll be dependent on them, and you'll be wanting to make peace and everything else, and they'll slander you. If you don't empower yourself in social circles, you'll be fear of rejection. You're going to be told what to believe. Misinformation campaigns like you see on television. And if you don't empower yourself physically, you'll be told what drugs to take or organs to remove. Those are all bullying mechanisms because you're not empowered. You don't empower yourself, you'll be told some spiritual dogma that's something that's antiquated about how you're supposed to be this or that, or you're going to go to heaven or hell. These are basically the dogmatic monopoled ideas of one-sidedness that's an amygdala response because you're disempowered. Empower your life. That's what I teach in the Breakthrough Experience. That's why I have people go on the value determination on my website to go and learn how to live by priority where you empower your life. and come to the breakthrough experience so I can help people actually learn the Demartini method to transform the bully into somebody that's actually a teacher and empower yourself. I always say that if you're addicted to people that are supporting you, you're going to attract the bully automatically to wake you up, to make sure that you have a balance of the two so you're stronger and resilient and adaptable and capable of being a genius. So I'm not addicted. I look back at my life and I had lots of challenges. I got bullied, lots of things. I had a lot of those things. I even got stabbed one time, shot at it one time. All of those are what make me empowered today. So it's not what happens to you, it's your perception of it. If you take it and turn whatever those challenges are into opportunities, you can turn it into go and do something amazing with those challenges. And then you'll thank those individuals who toughened you up a bit. So that's not what you probably used to hearing on the mainstream media out there, but that's what I've observed in my work. And I've been doing work 51 years in human behavior. And I want people to see both sides of life, because if you're trying to get rid of half of yourself, you'll never love yourself. You're trying to get rid of half of life, half of the world, half of the challenges you have in your life, you won't grow. Embrace, support, and challenge equally in the pursuit of a mission, a purpose in life. So come and do the breakthrough experience, and let me show you how to do the method, the Demartini method, on how to transform any friggin' bully in your life. I've had people in the breakthrough experience, unbelievable amount of times, that thought they were bullied. When they walked out of there, they were in tears of gratitude and realized there was nothing there except something to be grateful for. So if you were sitting there and playing victim of history, you don't have to. Come to the breakthrough experience. Let me show you how to be master of destiny and take whatever happens and turn it into something amazing. And make sure you live by priority. Anyway, that's my presentation on bullying today. And makes you think a little bit. Probably cause a bit of controversy. Good. Because it's time to basically realize that you're a human being and you need both sides in life to grow. Maximize your growth. Maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge. I'll see you next week. I'll see you at the breakthrough experience.